Retire to
Welcome back. Welcome back to the beloved community. Welcome back to this beloved community. I am glad to be back in this beloved community. It has been years since I've spoken in this pulpit, and it's a joy to be back. So, SWOSI is the Southwest Unitarian Universalist Summer Institute. It's a summer camp that has happened since the 1930s. With an interruption. It didn't meet for a couple years in COVID. This last summer, it was going to meet in a state park up in Oklahoma, but it didn't get quite enough registrations, almost got canceled. But there was a fallback position, and a team of dedicated UUs, including my wife, who's sitting on the front row, put together SWOSI at the U Summer Retreat Camp, which is up in the hill country about an hour west of San Antonio. And I was there. And my wife asked me, told me that the theme of the SWOSI for 2022 was reunion, because we'd skipped 2 years and we're finally getting back together. And it was great for me to see all of these old faces. And she asked me to give a talk on the topic of reunion, and this sermon grew out of that talk. And so I was up there, and the very first evening we went to Stock Pond, the pool, and we're walking down the hills, and I fell in walking with a man that looked familiar. His name tag said he was Reverend. And I looked at him, he said, I said, you look familiar to me, but I don't know where we have known each other. We walked along in silence, and finally I said to him, I do know where we were. Maybe a decade ago, you and I were at a fall conference up in Glen Rose, Texas, and we shared a bunk bed. And he was like, I remember that. And we both lit up. We remembered how we knew each other, and our hearts rose. And it's like, why is that such a joyful thing? Why does the heart rise up when we reconnect with somebody years later? We did. People come into our churches. New people come into our churches. People come into our churches to check us out. There are visitors here this morning. And what are they looking for? Why do they go to church? They're asking a question. They're asking, are these my people? Is this my tribe? Could I make a home here? And they're looking for clues. They look at all the clues. The words, the music, the plants, the style of dress, the way we dress, the way we do an offering. They're looking to say, are these my people? Is this my tribe? Do I belong here? They want to belong here. 30 years ago or more, I was living in New Orleans, and I used to ride the streetcar. And one morning I got on the streetcar. It was kind of crowded. I sat down next to a woman, and we were heading in towards the Central Business District, and I was reading the Times-Picayune States item. And after a little while, I turned to the woman and I said, hey, I'm done with the comics section. Would you like the comics? And she said, I would like the comics. And she was reading the comics. And then she looked at me and she said, did you go to Silver Lake grade school? And I said, yeah, I did. She said, I'm Joanne Feaster. I was in your 8th grade class. And we were both overjoyed, although we hadn't been particularly friends or close back then, but suddenly to connect from so far away, our hearts together rose up. The people come, they want to feel cherished, they want to feel recognized and loved and known. They come here searching for union and reunion. They come remembering their past communities and asking if this community is an extension of that one, a connection to that one. Even if they've never been here before, they want to be recognized the way Joanne recognized me on the streetcar. They want to be recognized, and in truth, I want to be recognized. Me too. I search for union and reunion. At my home church, Bay Area UU Church, which is 30 miles up the road, we had a minister, Bruce Beisner. He served us for 9 years, but he got offered a better job close to his family of origin, larger church, closer to his and his husband's family of origin. So he left us, and we had been out on COVID. We had not been meeting. We'd only been meeting by Zoom. But we decided for a going away party, we really needed to get together. So for the first thing that we did together after COVID was to meet at a restaurant. And I said, of course, I'll be there, but because I go to a restaurant. And I went there, and I knew that I was going to feel good seeing all of those people again. And I walked in the door, and there were maybe 50 of my co-members of that church, and I almost was bowled over by how good it felt. I was not expecting to feel this connected, this touched, this moved, to see my friends of many years for the first time in a year and a half, to have them come to greet me and greet them. I hunger for reunion and union. I've read an account from a surgeon, and she does day surgeries. She does small operations in her office, but they involve anesthesia. So the rule is that you can't drive yourself home from the doctor. You've got to have somebody else who will drive you home and go in with you and sit with you for a while. And she says that she has patients that are putting off necessary surgery. They have the insurance coverage, they've got the time there, but they don't have anybody who would drive them to the doctor or drive them home again. They're putting off needed surgery because they're disconnected, not because they're poor, but because they're poor in spirit. They are not connected, and they need the wine of reunion. They need to be connected to a community that would drive them to the doctor. And I need that too. And I also am glad that because I'm a member of a church, there are handfuls and handfuls, dozens of people in my church that if I really needed to, would be happy to drive me to the doctor. And the reflection of that is that also means that there are dozens of people who might turn to me to drive them to the doctor because it's a mutual thing. And I not only need to have somebody who will drive me to the doctor, I need to be needed. I need to feel like there are people that need me. It's part of what comes with the wine of reunion. I was at Swoosie one year in Oklahoma, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe more. I was walking around with a name tag and a cup of coffee in my hand, which I am wont to do. And while I was walking around with the coffee in my hand and a name tag, a woman came up to me and looked at me and said, "Are you Sarah Throop's son?" And I said, "Yes, my mother was named Sarah Throop." She said, "Well, you don't recognize me, but I'm Krista Drugan. And I said, "Oh, I do remember you. You were my younger sister's best friend back in 4th grade. What are you doing here?" She says, "Well, I grew up. I moved away. I found a UU church in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. And came to Swoosie. And our hearts rose up. We connected. We reconnected. We shared a cup of the wine of reunion. Later, I looked out around my home church, Bay Area, one Sunday morning, and sitting in the back row, next to a longtime member named John Harding, sitting in the back row was Krista Drugan. And I walked over to her and said, "What are you doing here?" And she said, "Well, John Harding was also along at Swoosie, and he and I connected, and now we're an item." And John even moved away from our church up to Bartlesville, Oklahoma, to be with Krista. And I felt connected. To have connections piled upon connections is part of the wine of reunion. But the wine is, I won't tell you that the wine is always sweet. Sometimes it's a little off. Sometimes the wine of connection sours a bit. I went to a reunion to connect with a longtime friend who I remembered from 40 years ago. And time had soured her. She spent the entire time that I talked to her complaining about her health and her relatives and her neighbors and her doctors. And I realized that there were maybe reasons 40 years ago that I took her in small doses. And on another time I went, you'll note a lot of these reunion stories connect through churches. I went, many decades ago, there was a woman named Gail, and I dated Gail for a while and broke it off after a while, and maybe didn't handle that as well as I should have. But the following summer, I went to San Jose, California for the summer. And while I was there, I went to the UU church, like our pianist. When I'm on travel, I check out the local UU church. I went to the San Jose church, and the first Sunday I was there, they had an a cappella men's group singing "I'm a Lone Lonesome Cowboy, a Long Way from Home." And I got up. They had joys and concerns. I went up, I lit a candle, and I said, "I am thankful." I said, "I just got here from Texas, and I'm so glad that you greeted me with 'I'm a lone, lonesome cowboy, a long way from home.'" And during the coffee hour, a woman came up to me and said, "Did you date Gail?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I'm her best friend, and I know all about you." And she was like, what good is reconnection like that? The joy of giving a talk at the Swoosie lifted up my heart, and I decided to go back to lay preaching, to pulpit supply, which is how I got to be here today, because I hadn't done it for a few years. And the first Sunday after I got back, the Reverend John Pepper, who I think has preached here a few times, he was preaching for us, and he showed up on Sunday morning with a guest with him. He had long time served the UU Church of Huntsville, Texas, and the Sunday that he came, a friend of his named Mary Wellborn, who had been active in that church but was elderly now and couldn't get around and was wheelchair bound and couldn't drive, and but had relocated to Webster, and so he knew that she was there, and he picked her up and brought her to service. And she didn't know a soul in the church except John. But by the end of that Sunday morning, she knew, half a dozen of us, and the care team had organized a brigade to get her to church most every Sunday and every Thursday. We hunger to connect. We hunger to connect and to share a glass of wine, even with strangers. Sometimes the joy of reunion is a reunion with somebody we're meeting for the first time. You too want the wine of reunion. Something I know. I don't know all of you, and yet I know that you thirst for the cup of union and reunion. When I lived in Atlanta, I worked on a crisis hotline. And I had 40 contact hours of training before they let me out on the line talking to people who are in drug crisis and suicide crisis and legal crisis and all those different crises. And it was some of the most useful instruction that I ever received. And one of the things they told me is that sometimes you will have somebody who's obviously lost, somebody who's in terrible pain, and they're inarticulate, and you don't know them, and you don't know what's going on with them, and you can't connect with them. And a telephone line is a very narrow connection. You can't see people's facial expressions. You can't look at their body posture. You don't know how they're dressed. You don't know lots of the clues that are useful for communication are closed off when it's just a telephone line. So what do you do when you have somebody who's in this level of crisis and you can't connect otherwise? And they said, one trick that seems to work is saying, I'm not sure, but can I check this out with you? I think I hear a lot of loneliness. Am I right? Am I hearing loneliness in your pain right now? And over again, that was the thing that broke through. That was like, yes, how did you know? Nobody knows how lonely I am. They need the wine of reunion. Where are they going to go for that wine? Where are they going to get blessed with that wine? I don't know most of you, and those who I do know, I don't know all that well, but I do know about you. And you get your wine, some of you get your wine in this community. You too are lonely. You too get connected when someone recognizes and tells the truth about that loneliness. You too are thirst. You too are thirstier than you have known. Where do they serve the wine? Here, in this community, in this beloved community, in this congregation, we have a table. We have the chalices. We have the bottles. We have the crowd. Come to this community, sit in this community, and fill your cup here. Welcome back to the beloved community. Thank you.
For coffee.
Thank you, David. And now if you'll please rise for our closing hymn, number 346, Come Sing a Song with Me. And you can remain standing for the closing words.
Oh, again, we're going to sing 2 verses.
And for our closing words, may the love that overcomes all differences and heals all wounds, that puts to flight all fears, that reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always. Amen. Now, to extinguish the chalice, we extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. And now for the choral benediction. Thank you for coming. There's more coffee in the living room. Oh, and the meeting for Get to Know Us at UU. Thank you.